been a night of violence in Dublin following this evening's Republic of Ireland versus England football match at Lansdowne Road. There are reports that a 60-year-old man died of a heart attack while vacating the ground and that an English supporter has been stabbed. The match was abandoned after less than half an hour when English fans rioted, hurling missiles and debris. And there are reports tonight of more violence in Dublin city centre and at the ferry terminal at Dunleera.
Hello and welcome to This Week Back in the Day. On this episode, we're going to be talking about when the English fans came to town on the 15th of February 1995 and smashed the place to pieces. I'm Dave, your host, joined as always by our own honorary Englishman, Martin Prendergast. Martin, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks, Dave. Thanks for the intro.
That's a cheap shot, isn't it?
Yeah, I expect nothing less.
So this is the first time that both sides had met at Lansdowne Road since the Euro 92 qualifier in November 1990. That was a 1-1 draw. That game had gone quite peacefully. However, there were clashes after the game, most notably on O'Connell Street in Dublin. This time round, that was an afternoon kickoff, but this time round we had a 6:15 kickoff. It was actually under the relatively newly installed floodlights of Lansdowne Road, and it would be shown on Network 2 and Sky Sports. After discussions, the FA of England were offered by the FA of Ireland 4,000 tickets out of about 46,000 and were seated in the Upper West End. What could go wrong? Unlike the 1990 meeting, God Save the Queen would be played, and that was actually the first time that anthem for a football match would be played in Dublin since 1964. There was an agreement in place between the FA and the FAI that neither anthem would be played. It just would save all the bother. Now, this, of course, for our younger listeners, was in the middle of the Troubles. Terrible time, and there was a lot of genuine hostility between Ireland and England. And before the games in Dublin, English fans had been heard singing "No Surrender to the IRA" and "Fuck the Pope." And actually, even some Irish supporters have been attacked physically and verbally by English fans, or so-called fans anyway, in the lead up around the Lansdowne Road area. Martin, obviously you were watching it back home with your little white top with your three little
Three lions yes, on the shirt back then.
3 lines on the shirt. I remember my brother actually telling me about this. He was in town with my grandmother. He had England fans going up to him and saying, "All right, Paddy, sing us a bit of Daniel O'Donnell," and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, this was a really strange time in football generally, and it's quite a fascinating time as well, because the backdrop of this is it can go back to 88, 1990 as well, when 88, obviously, Ireland beat England in the Euros. Great historic moment when Ray put the ball in English net. But the 1990 campaign was when they were both drawn together for the World Cup. The qualifying campaign for Euro 92 pitched them both together. Obviously, in 1990, in November, we played in Lansdowne Road. You've already mentioned the clashes that took place there. But I was actually at Wembley in the March of 91, and the backdrop of it is very political. It was an incredible night to be there at Wembley, and very, very volatile, hostile atmosphere, very, very threatening. And it's ironic that you're saying about the 4,000 tickets and where the Irish FA situated the fans in 95, because the English FA really messed up Wembley in 91, because you could actually buy tickets through the local newspapers. Basically, the Daily Mirror in England, you could ring up a number and give an address in England, and you could get tickets. And that was how they were selling tickets for the game. Now, the amount of Irish in London or England at the time were able to do so. So it was a very mixed, attendance, basically, at Wembley, and incredibly, hostile environment. The backdrop of that is actually the Birmingham Six had just been released in the March of 91, which was obviously a high-profile case where, miscarriage of justice and criminality, basically, of the establishment in England. And that was incredible. That obviously the height of the Troubles as well. So we had that incredible backdrop politically, and football teams were trying to actually play. So bringing it forward to 95, I remember the 90 game, leaving school, actually, the qualifier there in Dublin. And it was in the afternoon because Lansdowne Road had no floodlights. So a lot of games used to be during the day. This one here on 95, it was the first night game, really, that they were bringing it up, obviously, since Wembley. We had all the elements coming together because English fans were able to travel relatively close, isn't it? The relationship, as we know, too close for comfort. But, came over in their droves, were encouraged, actually, by different kind of hooligan factions to, this is an opportunity to come over to Dublin and basically do what they wanted to do.
There was actually like I saw a program and I was trying to find it on YouTube. It's gone now, but I remember I saw a documentary and it was like guys outside, obviously comma 18, outside Stamford Bridge, handing out leaflets. Go over and and that's what they did. Now, this is Premier League 1995. Still a huge element there, far right, fascist, right wing element there. That was associated around football. At the time, it's inconceivable now to think of that at a Premier League game, but that was going on. And yeah, it was just a completely different atmosphere, and it was quite poisonous, actually, to be fair. Obviously, we had the Northern Ireland game in '93. That was similar. November '93. That was another similar poisonous atmosphere. But yeah, this was a strange one for me. I remember I couldn't wait for it because at the time, as a kid, got to see England play. You didn't really get to see him play. We didn't see him in the '94 World Cup because he didn't qualify. And, you're used to seeing these guys on the TV. We didn't have Sky Sports in our house at the time, and it was special. So let's have a look at both starting lineups that night. Ireland ranked 9th in the world with 8 English-born Irish players. Sorry, Martin, I stole your stat.
Yep.
Number 1 in goal is Alan Kelly Jr. Number 2, Dennis Irwin. Number 4, Alan Kernahan. Number 5, Paul McGrath. Number 3, Terry Phelan. Number 6, Eddie McGoldrick. Number 7, Annie Townsend, the captain. Number 10, John Sheridan. Number 11, Steve Staunton. Number 8, David Kelly. And number 9, Niall Quinn. And then we look at the England 11, ranked 18th in the world. In goal, you had number 1, David Seaman. Number 2, Warren Barton. 5, Tony Adams. 6, Gary Pallister. 3, Graham Lasso. 11, Darren Anderton. 4, Paul Ince. 7, David Platt, who was the captain. 8, Peter Beardsley. 9, Alan Shearer. And 10, Matt Letizia. That was pretty much his second string team there, Martin. Now, a lot of notable names there, but that wasn't really...
No, back in '95, that was it. They were preparing for Euro '96, basically, where they were going to be the hosts. And yeah, I think one of the backdrops and important things to recognise here of how competitive this was perhaps perceived by England is that, we were ranked 9th in the world. We were on the back of a World Cup, good, successful campaign in the extent that we beat Italy. And all right, it didn't really work out. End of an era, as you said, with Jack's team. I think the fact we were ranked 9th really rankled with the English, and they were coming there preparing for the tournament. I think it's actually Warren Barton's debut. I think it might have been his sole cap that night. England.
It is.
And, there was a lot of players trying to force their way into Terry Venables' England squad for the Euros, which they were going to be hosting. And, subsequently, to be fair to them, did host it quite successfully. We were considered very much better than them at the time. And I think that was what rankled with the English.
This game was Terry Venables' 7th game in charge and his first away fixture. He was actually unbeaten up to this point as well. And as you said, he was building up towards Euro 96. And of course, under the floodlights was a really intense atmosphere in Lansdowne Road, crackling atmosphere, lots of singing from both sides. I'm sure not very pleasant songs being sung at each other from both sides, let's be honest. Jack was even called Judas by some sections of the England fans. Of course, Jack was a World Cup winner with England in 1966. Both anthems were booed heavily. I have watched this game in its entirety, all 27 minutes of it. It's actually a cracking game of football. It's really end-to-end. Joe Kinnear had said in the build-up to this, it'd be a high-end Premier League game, which, to be fair, he was pretty much on the money there, Martin. You've watched it obviously yourself. But it was really end to end, wasn't it? It was actually really entertaining stuff. It was high.
Yeah, it was really, really good. Yeah. It was excellent. In the 27 minutes, we got a goal, we got a disallowed goal, and it was really end to end, like you said, and very frenetic kind of pace. So, I think both teams were really going for it, and probably a crackling atmosphere as well will help with that. Now, it obviously doesn't help with all the negative chants and everything like that going on, but as I've already said, we were a better team than them then, so we fancied our chances, and I think our fans were probably gloating a little bit as well. Whereas England's fans, they were probably thinking we need to put them back in their place, but not all of them were thinking that way, of course.
No, and that does get lost in this, to be fair. And David Kelly would score with a really well-worked goal, actually, on the 22nd minute. We got some audio from that here.
He could make the challenge. It's Sheridan. Kelly ahead of him. Played in for him. Kelly! He's done it! Third time lucky for David Kelly. And no more than Ireland deserved.
Yeah, that's a really well worked goal there, actually. I know Jack gets a bit of stick for playing long ball stuff, mostly from the page. But then a few minutes later, actually, at the exact time here, 25 minutes and 53 seconds. Now, that is research, Martin. David Platt would reply for the visiting team.
Back to the game with Anderton. Ince with the shots. Oh, Platt, offside. David Platt was there to finish it off, but Mr. Hoover's at the flag up.
Denied by Mr. Hoovers. And that is actually when the trouble really started, because literally about a minute later, we had this.
Well, there's trouble in the crowd. That's the West Stand in the Lansdowne Road Stadium, down by the Wanderers pavilion. The referee has stopped the game because, well, he's actually telling them to hold on, or is he telling them to play on? There are guards on the pitch. There is trouble in the crowd.
I think the important thing there, George, is that the trouble is coming from the English section, which has been cordoned off. There aren't any Irish supporters in there, and I think it's very important for people to realise that.
Ray Tracy, the late, great Ray Tracy, making a case there for the Irish fan, making sure he gets that bit in there. You know, anyone listen up, there's no Irish supporters in it. Well, actually, there was Irish supporters in there, not causing trouble, but the FA had sent back a load of tickets because a lot of people on both sides, when they heard about that, 6:15 under the floodlights, everything going on in the troubles, they went, no, thank you very much. They knew there was going to be trouble on it. So a load of tickets got sent back to the FAI, and the FAI somehow managed to sell tickets to Irish fans to put into the England fans, which is outrageous when you think about it. But it did happen, and you can't see it on the... I'm sure we've all seen the footage. Martin, were you ever in the old West Stand in Lansdowne Road?
I was, yeah.
Of course you were. Of course you were. And basically, I was as well, just once, and they had the old wooden seats, and of course they broke those off, antique seats, and just threw them out as missiles. It was just ridiculous how that happened. But yes, the game called off after 27 minutes and 10 seconds by the Dutch referee. You know, it's mad when you look back at it though, Martin, isn't it? You see all the fans running on the pitch, the little boy who got all the free stuff, the little bastard, wherever he is. Sorry if you're out there listening, little boy. But yeah, that was incredible, wasn't it, when you look back at that?
It is really when hooliganism came to Dublin, basically, is how you can sum it up. And you have to remember that it is that, England fans haven't historically travelled very well. We know they've got that hooligan element, but this was just a perfect storm for them with the ticketing, with the location within the ground was absolutely criminal if you think about it, that they were put up above. And that was the thing. They were raining down parts of an old decrepit stadium to some extent as well. So that's why it was a bit of a perfect storm, that they could rip apart seats, launch them down onto the pitch. And I mean, people really did get seriously quite injured. There was people as, hospitalized and things like that.
One person died of a heart attack outside the ground. Not a lot of people actually talk about that.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's actually sad to... I've read something that, Jack Charlton, his first instinct when he's seen people running on the pitch to get away from the things being thrown down onto them, his instinct was back to Hillsborough in '89, where he was actually in the crowd that day.
That's because I hate this. We've never had anything like this in this country. We've never created anything like this abroad. It's when I play for England, I've never experienced anything like this before. And I've seen a lot in football, but I've never seen anything like that. And then the game was abandoned within 10, 15 minutes of getting off the park. They came and told us they'd abandoned the game. And I said, well, I didn't want the game abandoned. I would rather we went on with the game. I mean, what are you going to do with 2,000 English supporters running around Dublin tonight?
I think you could even argue about the policing, lack of kind of policing, basically, as well. Like I said, it was a perfect storm. It wasn't a footballing element who were causing the trouble. It was just those absolute lunatics coming in there to smash the place up, and mob mentality ruled.
Even like there was a documentary a couple of years ago on RTE, just shocking moments. They had B footage, didn't they? B-roll footage that you don't normally see, and they had clips there of Jack Charlton going on the pitch. Yeah, and actually, the annoying thing about it is that the guards had actually failed to act on information passed on with the British NCIS, not the NCIS you see in Italy, but basically the criminal intelligence. And they knew that Combat 18 were looking for cause trouble, but the guards went, nah, it's grand. Sure. What could go wrong? And of course, we talked about how the English were due to host Euro 96 the following year, you know, coming home. And as well, after the game, like, do you remember they pretty much frog marched the hooligan? Like, obviously the guards went in. Do you remember the footage where the guards go in and they just surround the fans and he tried to get out as many innocent people and Irish out of there, and he just surrounded them and wouldn't let them out, and they just battered the living shit out of the hooligans. That was amazing to me. I remember just watching that. I remember telling my uncle about that in America. He was delighted that the guards went in and got all heavy-handed with that. But they basically frog marched them after they battered them onto a dart to like Dunleary.
Yeah,
and just put them on a ship and just threw them out of the country, didn't they?
That's it. Yeah, didn't matter where they're going back to.
Gardaí clearly believe this is the quickest and cleanest way to move the fans out of the country, but there are many hundreds more still to be moved from Lansdowne Road to Dunleary. The fans were herded into the ferry terminal, with the number of sailings expected between now and midnight.
Because I remember the aftermath of it, and obviously being all on the news in England, because it was a massive shame, obviously, to English football. Very high profile here of what had happened, because to stop a game, it's a massive thing, and they were successful in doing that, disrupting it. But it just showed, they're all brave and they're all heroes, and legends in their own minds when they're smashing the place up. But the next day, when they're probably sobered up or they're not, or the narcotics have worn off, they're all being shipped off Irish soil when they're all covering their faces and stuff, because they're probably going back to their work and going to face the repercussions of it.
And you know what? At the time, now I understand it because I live over here. But at the time, I couldn't believe it that these guys had city jobs, like 9-to-5 bankers and I don't know, financial analysts and all this kind of stuff. Because obviously, when they don't quite do it now, I don't know if they do it now. Really, I don't really watch the news. I try not to watch the news, but they used to announce like, oh yeah, Joe Bloggs, who lives at such and such residence and has such and such job. They all had high paying 9-to-5 banking jobs. We were just like, we were, my brother and I just kind of looking at the news going, this is incredible. These guys are actual professionals, as you would call, strictly speaking, professionals. And there they were. And there's like all news reports, like where they go on the boat over with the guards. So the guards went on the boat with them, I think the Holyhead, and he just went, you have them.
Yeah, because you'd imagine they would have been met by the kind of the British police probably to take over and police them over that, but not just have free reign on a boat, which would have been mental. But so they should have brought something decrepit old thing and scuttled it halfway across and seen them panic. That's what they could have done. That's probably a bit too far.
The old BNI Leinster. Do you remember that? Jesus. But yeah, you rightly talk about it. It was a big story the next day. There's a Sky News clip. There's actually a clip out there. I don't know if it's out there anymore. I'll splicey the audio on it with Eamon Dunphy on Sky News. Have you seen that?
I don't think so, no.
Players, Eric Cantona, who are a commercial asset to the game and who are marketed, not as footballers, they're marketed as hard men. So when you have that kind of culture within the game and you don't attack it, you don't identify it and throw it out, as both Manchester United and the Football Association have failed to do in Cantona's
Well, let's
case.
put that point straight away to Glenn Curtin.
You're sending signals.
I mean, you've got a right to answer that. I think it's a fairly serious charge. It's basically saying lack of discipline at the top is followed by lack of discipline on the terraces.
Yeah, well, it's absolute waffle from Eamon Dunphy.
But yeah, he was on Sky News Sunrise the next day. And of course, Channel 4 covered it. Sports Night were supposed to show it. Jimmy Hill doing a Nazi salute on the camera, which is a bit weird. Obviously, he's not a Nazi. He was just... That was another thing as well, wasn't it? That you had fascists.
Yeah.
And they were doing a Nazi salute in Lansdowne Road. You're going, this is fucking insane.
That's probably the first time I think I ever heard of like Combat 18, you know, which is obviously Adolf Hitler, that's what they're named after, the initials and stuff. But yeah, it was the first time I'd ever really known of that kind of organisation. And, you know, to be fair to them, they were quite organised because they got the game disrupted and they caused mayhem. But I think, you know, it's gone down in folklore, and sometimes you think it's a bit of a myth. But yeah, the guards were kind of criticised for not being there and getting involved. You know, it went around Ireland, didn't it? Pretty soon enough that like they gave out a good few hidings after, and then landed them off from the ferry. And it was, you know, I'm sure there's many a guard who was on duty that night who would be an interesting, you know, to hear from them, to hear what happened.
I have had a few comments because it's coming around again, the anniversary. It was actually today. And basically, I've heard the stories. There's a few ex-guards on the page that like it. But yet again, you know, it was just typical Irish planning, wasn't it? I.e., there was no planning. They dealt with it very well, but they didn't plan. I mean, I don't know what was so different, because I think they were in the they were in the North Stand, weren't they, in 1990, the England fans, isolated on their own, you know, like one level. That's what should have happened. But yeah, it was crazy. A bit of aftermath from it. Of course, the Euros were due to be held in England the next year. There was a lot to talk about it being taken away. Of course, spoiler alert, that didn't happen. There was a soft ban given to England in terms of playing Lansdowne Road again. No friendlies, but if there were qualifiers to be played in Lansdowne Road, they would be played at Lansdowne Road. And of course, the next meeting, Martin, wouldn't be until 2013 at Wembley, another 1-1 draw. I was at that game.
Yep, so was I.
I was actually in the England section.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah. My sister got the tickets, so fair enough. He was English, and yeah, I sat in there, and I went undercover. I had the white Ireland top under my jacket, and almost had a conniption fit when Shane Long scored after a beautiful Seamus Coleman cross. So there you go. And then, of course, they did play again on Lansdowne Road, but it wasn't until 2015. It was a Sunday morning game. It was like 11 a.m. What was it, like 11 a.m. kickoff? Or?
Oh, no, it was later on than that. But it was complete contrast, 95. You could have fell asleep at it.
It felt like an early morning kickoff. Yeah, I remember watching that hungover, eating my pizza. Well, that's all we have time for tonight. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts, and to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which is all in our bio. Thank you lovely people out there, so much for supporting the podcast. And we'll see you next week when we talk about when Liam Toohey walked out on Jack Charlton. I cannot wait. All the best. Good night. God bless.